He could not sleep. Thin rays of the moon passed through the cracks in the wall into the hut and fell at various spots on the floor. It was no good staring blankly at the hazy darkness in which every object lost its clear edges. Waiyaki wanted to talk to someone. That was what oppressed him, the desire to share his hopes, his yearnings and longings with someone, his plans in education, the desire for assurance and release. Twice he had tried to tell his mother to ask her something, but each time he stood in front of her and he heard her shaky voice, he found himself talking of irrelevant things. It was strange that the tremor in her voice should set doubts darting in his soul. After all, what was the longing? What was the something for which he yearned? Did he know it himself? Yet the hopes and desires kept on haunting him. They had followed him all his life. He did not want to think, but thoughts came and flooded his heart. Strange chapters of his life unfolded before him. His young sister, who had died early, was the only person with whom he had been intimate. He had loved her, if that sort of closeness could be called love. He thought he loved the hills and their people, but they did not give him that something he could get from her. Then he had been very small, many seasons before his second birth. He wondered why he remembered that time. But she was dead, and death was the end of everything on this earth. After you were buried, you turned into a spirit. Waiyaki wondered if his sister was a spirit, a young, good spirit. Was she watching him? He turned round, rather frightened. He felt guilty. Waiyaki was superstitious. He believed the things that the people of the ridges believed. Syriana mission had done nothing effective to change this. His father had warned him against being contaminated by the ways of the white man. Yet he sometimes wondered, was the education he was trying to spread in the ridges not a contamination? He wanted to sleep. From side to side he wriggled on his bed, trying to close his eyes and shut away these thoughts that would not let him alone. He thought, there is something unexplainable in the coming of the white man. He had found no resistance in the hills. Now he had penetrated into the heart of the country, spreading his influence. This influence could be disruptive. Muthoni had died on the high altar of this disruption. She had died with courage, probably still trying to resolve the conflict within herself in an attempt to reach the light. Since her death, everything had gone from bad to worse, and probably conflicting calls and loyalties strove within the hearts of many. Not many were like Muthoni in courage. Waiyaki wondered where he was. Was he trying to create order and bring light in the dark? The image of his sister, that of Muthoni and many others, followed each other across his mind in quick succession. Shadows that had no concrete form. Shadows that came and went, sometimes merging, forming nothing. Then for one moment, his life became one white blur. But only for a second. Then came the mist, dark with no definition. The clear edges of life had gone. He lay still, a little frightened, not knowing what to think or how to find a way out. The mist began to fade. Slowly, the edges seemed to be forming. He could now see the outline of a shape coming into being through the thinning mist. Waiyaki waited for it to melt away into nothingness, but it did not. The shape remained there, fixed, and he could not drive it away. He peered at it, and for a time he was fascinated by it. It was the shape of a woman, and he could not make out who she was. Even this too vanished, and still he could not sleep. It was no good sitting in bed, staring into the hazy darkness. He got out of bed and creaked it as he stood up. He put on his clothes quietly with a slight inner agitation, an excitement of a lover thinking of the impending meeting with his woman. He went out of the hut. He wanted to go to Makuyu to see Kamau or any other person. A man maybe would understand him. a man to whom he could talk. The moon was also awake. Her glare was hard and looked brittle. The whole ridge and everything wore a brilliant white, and the little things that in the day appeared ordinary seemed now to change into an unearthliness that was both alluring and frightening. Waiyaki listened for voices on the ridge, but he could only hear silence. As he moved across the ridge, through small bushes and trees, the silence and the moon's glare seemed to have combined into one mighty force that breathed and had life. Waiyaki wanted to feel at one with the whole creation, with the spirits of his sister and father. He hesitated. Then the oppression in him grew, and the desire to talk with someone mounted. The brightness of the moon seemed now soft and tangible, and he yielded to her magic. And Waiyaki thrust out his arms and wanted to hold the moon close to his breast because he was sure she was listening and he wanted her cold breath near him. Now his muscles and everything about his body seemed to vibrate with tautness. Again he was restless, and the yearning came to him. It filled him and shook his whole being so that he felt something in him would burst. Yearning. Yearning. Was life all a yearning and no satisfaction? Was one to live a strange hollowness pursuing one like a malignant beast that will not let one rest? Waiyaki could not know. Perhaps nobody could ever know. You had just to be. Waiyaki was made to serve the tribe, living day by day with no thoughts of self but always of others. He had now for many seasons been trying to drain himself dry for the people, yet this thing still pursued him. Suddenly, he thought he knew what he wanted. Freedom. He wanted to run. Run. Hard. Run anywhere. Or hover aimlessly, wandering everywhere like a spirit. Then he would have everything. Every flower. Every tree. Or he could fly to the moon. This seemed possible, and Waiyaki raised up his eyes to the sky. His heart bled for her, but he could not run. And he could not fly. All this while Waiyaki had been moving. Soon he was down at Honia River. The crickets went on with their incessant shrilling. The quiet throb of the river echoed in his heart. He felt comforted. The water looked strange under the moon. He crossed the river and began climbing up the slope, following up the cattle road that would take him to Joshua's village, Makuyo. He would go and see Kamau. It was strange how his life and Kamau's and Kinudhia's seemed to be running on the same road, always affected by the same events. When young, they used to take their herds grazing together. At Siriana, they were together. It was only after Waiyaki's circumcision that they separated for a time. Kamau was initiated a few months after the breakaway, and now they were together at Marioshoni. For a time, Waiyaki became wrapped in thoughts about Kamau, Kinudhia, and their life at school. He stopped short and looked up. He had almost collided with a woman. Waiyaki did not speak another word or move. Nyambura was standing in front of him, and he felt awkward. "Oh, is it you?" he said at last, just to break the silence. I did not know it was you," she hastily said and glanced back over the shoulder. "Excuse me, I was lost in my own thoughts." Waiyaki had not seen much of Nyambura, and whenever they met, they were like strangers. Waiyaki was thinking of a day when he had seen Nyambura coming from Honia River, a huge water calabash on her back. He had been sitting on a raised bit of ground, and he had known she would pass near where he was. At this, he had felt afraid and hidden in the bush. He had watched her trudging up the hill till she had vanished. He had felt relief. That was now many seasons past. He had not thought any more about her, not until tonight. And all at once, Waiyaki recognized the shape in his mind that had refused to melt into nothingness. Nyambura still feared her father. She knew that if he saw her standing there, he would be angry. She was often lonely. The death of Muthoni had deprived her of the only companion she had ever had. So now she went to the river alone. She went to church alone. Now and then she would strike up a friendship with one or two girls on the ridge, but not one of them could replace Muthoni. Often Nyambura wept when she remembered her and all the places where they had been together, all the secrets they had ever whispered to one another, flooding her mind. Then she would feel the pain inside her. The pain wrung dry her heart and no tears would fall. And sometimes she would run to Honia and just stay there, watching the flow of the water. Then she would go home feeling at peace. So the river, especially on Sundays, was her companion. She had her own place where she often went. To her father, she grew cold. Although she obeyed him in everything and thought that Muthoni had been wrong to disobey her father, she could not fail to connect Joshua with her sister's death. She still thought it a sin to be circumcised. When such a thought came, she wondered if the death had not been a punishment from heaven, but somehow she could not accuse her sister. "Tell Nyambura I see Jesus." She always remembered these words and she clung to them. She was grateful to Waiyaki for bringing them to her. She wondered about him. She could never understand him. He was educated at the mission, yet he was leading the elements who had broken away from Syriana. Was it not known everywhere that it was this young man who had started the schools? Marioshoni was famous everywhere. Nyambura thought Waiyaki proud. Why? Whenever they met, he would never stop to talk. Perhaps he feared her father. Not that she wanted anything from him, but somehow she often longed to discuss Muthoni's death with somebody who would understand. Waiyaki was the only person who had been close to her sister, and Nyambura could never think of Muthoni without Waiyaki coming into the picture. Sometimes she wished he had been on their side. He was so young and strong and knew so much. She would have spoken to him about many things. She rarely met him, and whenever they met, she always waited for him to make it possible for her to talk to him. But he always passed on after a quick greeting. A queer man. Sometimes she feared him and thought he refused to talk to her because she was the daughter of Joshua. Again, Nyambura glanced over her shoulder in the direction of her home. She wondered whether to stop or to go on. She heard Waiyaki's voice. "I am going to see Kamau." "And I, Johanna. My father sent me to him to tell him to come to our home tonight." There was a little silence. Then they both laughed. Waiyaki's heart beat faster. "Then we can walk together," he suggested. They moved on, slowly. He was at a loss and did not know what to say. He was thinking of this girl. Muthoni had been the cause of their first meeting. Then Nyambura had been a fairly tall girl with well-formed features. Now he could see the woman in her under the bright moonlight. "What are you going to do there?" she asked. Waiyaki thought, "What am I going to do there?" It was then that it occurred to him that he did not want to see Kamau. Not now. He too thought of the people and what they would say now if they saw them walking together. Above them, the moon gazed and lit the whole land. Nyambura was not circumcised, but this was not a crime. Something passed between them as two human beings, untainted with religion, social conventions, or any tradition. "I'm going just to see Kamau and the family." Nyambura felt a little angry. She thought, he's going to see Kabonyi to discuss their activities. They came to a place where their ways parted. They stopped there and stood as if held together by something outside themselves. Perhaps it was the magic of the moon that held them both rooted to the spot. Waiyaki wanted to dance the magic and ritual of the moon. His heart beat hard, beating out the darkness. And Nyambura stood there looking as if she were the embodiment of serene beauty, symbolized by the flooding moon and the peace around. Suddenly, Waiyaki felt as if the burning desires of his heart would be soothed. If only he could touch her. Just touch her hand or her hair. He controlled himself. A strange uneasiness began to creep through him. "Are you still teaching?" "Yes. I have not seen your school." "You should come someday. And why not tomorrow? In the afternoon, just after school closes. I could take you around." That was a good time. The teachers and the children would have gone. She agreed. They parted without even shaking hands, watching. She left him there, standing, watching her vanishing form. He moved a few paces forward and then abruptly stopped and turned back. He did not feel like seeing anybody else that night.